was on tonight. Throw that thing from left, right, side to side.
Hi everybody, foXnoMad here, and today I want to help you travel smarter by taking a look at the DJI Mavic Mini 2, which might be the best travel drone of 2020, with one missing feature which might dictate whether or not you should go with the Mavic Mini 2 or maybe move up in the DJI consumer drone line. So this isn't going to be your typical review. It's actually not going to be a review at all. It's really to answer the question whether or not you should get the DJI Mavic Mini 2 if you travel frequently. Now, the DJI Mavic Mini 2 is DJI's latest drone, and it is small and it is powerful. It is about the size of a phone, and of course it weighs 249 grams, which is just 1 gram under what most regulations require for drone registrations in many parts of the world. So being that the DJI Mavic Mini 2 is so small and it is so portable, the obvious answer might be yes, of course, it's obviously the best travel drone, especially if you travel very frequently. If this is the drone that you're going to take with you, of course you should probably take this drone because it is so small and so tiny, but it is missing a few features, and one in particular which should make you think twice. First though, let's get one question right out of the way, which is if you have a DJI Mavic Mini 1 and you're wondering if you should upgrade to the Mavic Mini 2, the answer is a definite yes. If you're looking to upgrade your Mavic Mini 1 and you want something the same size, go with the Mavic Mini 2. It is better in almost every way. It has all the upgrades that we wanted from the Mavic Mini 1, and they're all in the Mavic Mini 2 now. Pretty much all the features that were missing and that we complained about with the Mavic Mini, they're there in the Mavic Mini 2. It's not often you get such a clear upgrade choice between two successive tech products, but this is one of them. The Mavic Mini 2 brings with it so many things we all wanted in the Mavic Mini 1: 4K video, much improved flight and higher winds comparable to the Mavic Air 2, and OcuSync 2.0, which lets you fly the Mavic Mini up to 10 kilometers away. And aside from that extended range, OcuSync provides a much better connection between your drone remote and the drone, which is great for flying obviously, but also maintaining a good, clear picture on your phone of what the drone is actually seeing. And if there's anything that we've learned from DJI is that they tend to keep their version 2 products around a lot longer than they keep around their version 1 products. And version 2 is usually a lot better than those version 1 products. There's usually quite a jump in technology between the version 1 and the version 2. Those version 2s hang around a lot longer than version 1s, so it's most likely a good purchase choice for the foreseeable future. And of course, there are trade-offs that we're willing to make when it comes to the Mavic Mini 2 because of its size. So let's go back to its size. Like I said, it's about the size of an iPhone Pro Max, and it's tiny and under 250 grams. It's actually exactly 249 grams, which for those of you who don't know, I made a video about this earlier, which I'll link to in the description. But essentially 250 grams is the cutoff for a lot of regulations in the United States and around the world for when you have to register your drone. So drones that are less than 250 grams don't usually have to be registered in a lot of places, and that means it's easier to fly. So if you travel frequently, that's one bonus about having the Mavic Mini 2, is that it's under that regulatory weight for registration in a lot of places around the world. But at the end of this year and into next year, that's going to change in a lot of European countries. So although it is great to have a drone that's that light for regulatory reasons, that is shifting now as countries and regulations adapt to that 249 gram drone that just hit the market. So regulations are adapting to that, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that this drone is so small and so light. So in my case, for example, I travel with the Mavic Pro, and I've been trying to downsize a lot of my travel gear this year, ironically, in a year when many of us couldn't really travel. But in terms of tech, it's a good time because cameras are getting smaller, like Sony has the A7C. We're seeing smaller things from DJI, like the DJI Pocket 2, for example. And when it comes to drones, there's a lot of weight that can be saved, especially with the Mavic Air 2 and going all the way down to the Mavic Mini 2. We're getting to a point where power and portability are really coming together, so you don't have to make as many trade-offs when you get a smaller tech product. It's not going to be as compromised as the full-size big brother of that product. We're getting to a point where they can fit much more powerful electronics, better cameras, better sensors, and so on into these smaller and smaller products. And going back to that drone I just mentioned, the Mavic Air 2, for me, in terms of travel, that's really the comparison that has to be made between the Mavic Air 2 and the Mavic Mini 2. If you're looking for a good travel drone, Those are the two drones that you're probably going to want to take a look at. So let's take a look at the differences with the Mavic Air 2 and the one that really counts. Now, if aerial photo or video quality are your primary concern, you're going to have to look elsewhere from the Mavic Mini 2. You know who you are already, but if you're like me where it's important, but that small portable size is just going to be so nice to carry around, that lack of 60 frames per second at 4K and the 12 megapixel photos on this smaller sensor aren't too bitter of a pill to take. The Mavic Mini 2 can also handle nearly all the wind conditions the Mavic Air 2 can, and it's almost as fast in sport mode. The battery life is comparable as well, from 31 to 34 minutes. The Mini 2 doesn't have the 8K hyperlapse or the smart tracking features either, which I don't particularly use often, but it doesn't have those tracking features for one important reason, which might be your deal breaker. There are no front or rear obstacle avoidance sensors on the Mavic Mini 2, unlike the Air 2. Those sensors essentially will automatically stop your drone if it gets too close to a tree or a person or other large object in the way. And those sensors might not seem like a big deal to many of you, but when you're traveling very frequently, you're often in places that are unfamiliar to you. So you're flying the drone at distance, and even though your drone is within a visual line of sight, you know when you're looking up at the sky, if you've ever flown drones, it's so easy to lose the drone. Just basically on a clear day, it's very easy to lose the drone, and it's very difficult to get perspective on where it's moving and how other objects, things like birds, where are they in relation to your drone? It's hard to tell that from the drone itself. Even if you look down on your phone at the camera, you can get an orientation of the position. But I've traveled in a lot of places and I've had a lot of birds be curious or furious with my drone, and they've come really close. And so I've had to kind of navigate dodging birds and trying to get the drone back to me. And those obstacle avoidance sensors have come in handy more than a few times in those situations. Now, that might seem absurd, but I'm sure many of you have flown your drones often, have had encounters with things like birds. But even if you haven't, obstacle avoidance sensors can help you in other ways. Like when you're trying to get a tight shot, let's say you're trying to get a shot in the woods and you're navigating a few trees, as your drone gets a little bit further away from you, again, it can be difficult to see exactly where your drone is. It can be difficult to exactly get a read on where your propellers are in regards to things that you're trying to avoid to get a particular shot. Those obstacle avoidance sensors come in really handy in those situations as well. Even if they don't stop your drone, even if they don't just stop your drone outright, they will show up on the screen on your DJI app so you can actually see when objects are close. You'll get beeping if things get too close, so it does help a lot. It helps a lot when you're flying your drone. Now, whether or not DJI was trying to keep the weight down of the Mavic Mini 2 or maybe differentiate it from the Mavic Air 2, those lack of sensors on the Mavic Mini 2 might be a deal breaker for many of you. And if you're getting your drone for the first time, if you don't have a lot of flight experience, then having a drone with those sensors really does come in handy and can save you from a couple of crashes. In my couple of drone crashes, those obstacle avoidance sensors wouldn't have helped much because they were into very small branches that those obstacle avoidance sensors don't pick up. But it's nice to have, and over the years of flying, those sensors have saved me from a lot of situations, and maybe not just crashes, but they've given me a good sense of where things are, so I can get those better, tighter shots that I want to get, maybe get some more complex shots, and I can fly a lot more confidently in different places that I'm unfamiliar with when I'm traveling around the world. Now, if you're planning to fly your drone more or less in the same locations that you're familiar with, if you have some drone experience, or even if you don't, but you're willing to give yourself the time in an open area to learn how to fly your drone, then the lack of obstacle avoidance sensors shouldn't be that big of a deal for you. But if you travel very frequently and this is going to be your primary travel drone, then those sensors are probably going to come in handy more often than not, and they're worth it to get all the other upgrades that you get, let's say with the Mavic Air 2, along with those sensors as well. And it's not like the Mavic Air 2 is a huge drone. It's smaller than the Mavic Pro, for example, so it's not going to be a behemoth in your backpack. Yes, that means you might have to register your drone depending on where you're traveling, and my app DroneMate can help you figure out what those rules are and give you all the registration forms, also linked in the description below. But it's not as cumbersome as you might think, and depending on where you're traveling, those 249 grams, especially with the laws changing in a lot of the world, coming up on January 1st, might not be such a huge advantage as it once was. Now, Mavic Mini 3 with obstacle avoidance just might be the ultimate travel drone, but until that happens, then you're probably better off being safer than sorry, especially if this drone is going to be the only one that you bring with you on the road. So those are my thoughts, but let me know what you would decide on the Mavic Mini 2. Is that your travel drone? Is it worth it for the obstacle avoidance to go up to the Mavic Air 2? Or is portability the thing that you care about the most? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll have new videos for you every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the
My
next video.
favorite song right on top. Yeah. And we never stop. Music pumping, we just keep on rolling. Yeah. No, we never stop.